wanted to become. Okay, we're recording. So good evening, everyone. This is attorney Robyn McCoy with Robyn Legal, and we have our special honored guest, President C.K. Hoffler, who is the National Bar Association's president. So welcome, C.K. I was excited to have you join me. I'm vice president for Black women lawyers in Michigan. We have our elections coming up. Actually, this Sunday, I'll be running for president. But I really wanted to have you come and interview you, and we'll put this on our Black women lawyers, like our Facebook page and our Michigan Women of Color page. Because, just having met you in New York at the National Bar and looking at your profile, your background, is just very inspirational to me. And I'm like, I know there's some other sisters in the law that would love to hear from you about your story and your passion. So welcome.
Well, thank you. And Robyn, it is great to be here. It's great, even though we are sharing this experience via Zoom or on YouTube, I am just delighted that we're having this interaction, that we're able to talk, because it's been a while since I've seen you. It's been probably 2 years, 2.5 years, since New York of 2019.
Right.
So New York in 2019, July of 2019. So it's been over 2 years, really.
It has. And I mean, I did do the NBA like virtual last year, but yeah, it's definitely, this is different. This is the unique experience with everything. It's definitely, I had talked to my webmaster, shout out to Kyle. He's my guy who helps me with my website and all my tech support and all that, about how I wanted to be kind of more tech savvy, but never could I have imagined that I would be at the point where I am now. Like, I had talked to my webmaster. So you can hear. See, I'm sharing what we're doing right now on, I'm having it on the YouTube and I'm about to put it on the Facebook, but never would I imagine I would be this tech savvy where I'm doing YouTube.
I'm impressed.
I'm doing YouTubes and I'm doing, I'm like, wait, this would have been for him to do, but now it's like, no, because you got to be safe. So I'm doing YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of that. So for the audience, I want to start out with your bio. So you're a seasoned trial attorney and CEO of the C.K. Hoffler firm, which is a trilingual law firm, English, Spanish, French. Je parle français, le français si bien. And hola, hablo un poco en español. I took a semester of Spanish, but I lived in France. So, okay. So based in Atlanta, Georgia. And she specializes in commercial litigation, opioid litigation, catastrophic injuries, civil rights, global commercial transactions, medical negligence, wrongful death, and employment cases. Ms. Hoffler is licensed in Georgia, Florida, Virginia, DC, and Pennsylvania. To date, C.K. Hoffler and her teams have tried or settled cases totaling over $800 million. An accomplished attorney, Ms. Hoffler was previously a partner at Edmund, Lindsay and Hoffler, LLP, and a partner at the Willie Gary Law Firm in Florida, where she ran the commercial and international litigation practice for 13 years. So she's also counsel to civil rights icon, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and has represented him and the Rainbow Push and Wall Street Project for the past 30 years. Ms. Hoffler also lectures extensively on trial and best practices strategies to legal professionals and young lawyers across the nation. On July 29th, 2020, Ms. Hoffler was sworn in as president of the National Bar Association. She's received her JD from Georgetown University, BA from Smith College, and studied at Collège du Le Monde, University of Geneva in Switzerland, and Banksome Hall in Canada. She speaks French fluently and is proficient in Spanish and Portuguese. She holds a number of honors and awards for her achievements in law and is active in her community. So you can visit her website, www.ckhofflerfirm.com. So again, welcome, CK. So you obviously know you have an amazing background. And so first question I have for the audience is, what inspired you to become an attorney?
First of all, that's a great question. And thank you, Robyn, that was a great introduction. And for just, asking me to be on today and to join your audience. What inspired me to be an attorney is I wanted to have a voice. I knew at an early age that there was something in me that just felt that I needed to speak. Today, I would say speak truth to power. Back then, I didn't know to use that expression, but I felt that I could be an advocate for folks, for people who had no voice. And I knew that at a young age. So when I was in 10th grade, I did work for a law firm over the summer. I had 3 or 4 jobs, and one of them was to work at a law firm and just to get the experience, because I felt that advocacy and practicing law, and I really thought I might pursue an international career at that point, would be the way to go for me. So that's where it got started.
Okay, that's where it got started. Yeah, because I was 14. I mean, for me, as I mentioned off the record, that my father is a lawyer, and I was 14. I had wanted to be an actress. And see, you probably would remember Dynasty. Like, I watched Dynasty with Joan Collins and Diane Carroll. I wanted to be an actress. I'm like, I'm going to act. And then my parents raised me to be socially conscious. I'm here in Ann Arbor, and we practice in Ann Arbor and Detroit. And I decided I wanted to become a lawyer. And I said I would act in the courtroom to help liberate the brothers in the system. And so that's what in November, it'll be 20 years for me and 40 years for my dad.
Congratulations.
And,
wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And so you said you were in the 10th grade, you worked at a firm, and you said you had the interest early on to do the international law.
I did. I have an older brother, a late brother, who passed away a few years ago, who was a lawyer. So I did have a role model. I was familiar, had met lawyers over the course of my life. But for me personally, I think I was inspired in the 10th grade. Because when I worked in a law firm, I said, there were things that I thought that I could do well. But the most important thing was interacting with people. I've always loved people. And I always had a soft spot for people who had no voice, or people who people looked down on, because I felt that that was never right. And I just felt that if God gave me the ability to speak and be an advocate, that's what I was going to do, because I felt I was given much opportunity, and I was very involved in theater as well, as many lawyers were. And I didn't want to pursue a career in theater, but I felt that that would help me tremendously with being a lawyer, because my perception of a lawyer back then was in a courtroom. We saw movies, we saw, shows like Perry Mason and all that. And that was my perception of what a lawyer did. Well, of course, that's a false perception, but only a certain segment of lawyers do trial work. And even a smaller group of lawyers actually go to trial. So it's, fiction, and just ideally, I was thinking that I just wanted to be an advocate, whether I went into court, whether I was helping people. And I just figured that if people had no voice, and most of those people look like us, that I could help bridge that gap. And that's what really caused me to have passion about being a lawyer, was being able to give voice to those who had no voice. Because, by the way, there are many people who are very close to me, have been close to me my whole life, who had no voice. And so I just felt it would be tremendous if I could give voice to them.
Okay, and then let's start with the international law. And I mean, you've doing that, and you've lived in some exciting places. So what was that like, going in and doing the international law practice?
For me, it was just a natural progression of how I was raised. I went to school overseas. I went to school in Switzerland from grades 1 to 8. Grades 9 to 13, I went to school in Canada, in Toronto, Canada. And then I came to the US to go to college. And so for me, I had a lot of familiarity, was very comfortable in an international environment. So as I progressed through law school, I went to Georgetown because I wanted to be in DC, and I wanted to be at a school that had a robust international program. And Georgetown had a robust, and still has a robust, international program. So that's how I tailored my decision of what law school to go to. And in the process, I started working after my first year of law school with a huge firm in Washington, DC, in the Washington office. And I did a lot of work. I worked with them throughout law school, and then I got an offer to go with them permanently once I graduated. But I also, during my second summer, worked at the World Bank in their legal department as an intern. Okay. And honestly, it's a good thing that I did that, because up until I thought that law was just a stepping stone for me to pursue what I thought was a career as a diplomat, work for the UN, work at the World Bank, work at the IMF, all of those things, or live overseas, maybe be an ambassador. That was sort of my dream. Okay. And when I worked at the World Bank, as I saw that when you are in an organization, a phenomenal international organization like the World Bank, as a lawyer, you're a staff attorney. You're not the main event. You're a staff attorney, and you are serving the interests and the needs of the economists and people on the finance side globally as an attorney, reviewing contracts and all that kind of stuff. And I felt, while that was interesting, that probably was not where my passion lied. So I took the job at the law firm I clerked with throughout the summer and throughout law school. And that's where I began my journey doing international work, because they had a big international practice. There was an African-American partner who was the managing partner of the Washington, D.C. office. He happened to have a robust international practice. And that's where I began representing foreign governments. And because of my language skills, I was able to travel extensively to work on behalf of foreign governments on the African continent, in the Caribbean. I also did some work for some European countries. And so that really is where my journey began, doing international work. And it just continued, went on and on and on and on. I met Reverend Jackson as a practitioner. I think when Reverend Jackson was running, and you weren't alive at this time, I know you weren't, but in 1984, you were not alive. Rob, you were not alive. And if you believe what I say about my age, I theoretically wasn't alive. But in 1984, Jesse Jackson, Reverend Jesse Jackson, ran for president. He ran again in 1988. He sparked a movement. And in 1988, I had met him on the campaign trail, and I was in Washington, D.C., and law school in D.C., and all of us wanted to work and really be involved.
Go with the flow. Okay. So, all right, so folks, we'll edit things, but I'm interviewing the wonderful and exciting NBA president, CK Hoffler. So she was talking about her wonderful, exciting experiences as an international lawyer. I actually took international law, and when I was in college, I lived in France. I was pre-law in undergrad. I went to University of Chicago, and I was pre-law. And then I decided to switch over to, what did I do? I switched over to anthropology. And then when I went to law school, I went to University of Michigan Law School. I went to South Africa and did an externship there. So, yeah. So I was as I said, my interest in the law was very much criminal justice, power to the people. And that's what I'm still doing now. But so CK, I also want to ask you, if you're somebody that's an aspiring lawyer, what guidance or tips would you give to them?
Well, I would say, if you're an aspiring lawyer, first of all, read as much as you can. You really should be a strong reader. Because one thing that Robyn, about law school, you've got to read a lot. And read and digest. So I tell young folks all the time, you don't have to take certain courses, but learn how to read and digest information and learn how to write. Legal writing is different from other writing, but if you write well, that will help you so much when you're a lawyer. If you read well, if you like reading, that will help you. If you don't read a lot now, just begin reading. And you don't have to read, intense books on logic and things like that. Just read and get into that habit. The other thing is, you have to be tenacious. You have to have in your belly the desire to succeed, because law school is not for the faint at heart. It really isn't. And it's a tough journey. I personally did not enjoy law school. I love the people that I met. I enjoyed part of the experience because I was able to meet such great people, and I was in DC. But the experience itself, that 3 years of Socratic method, that I could have just, pushed aside, but it was a means to an end. So I think
that's me too. I did not enjoy law school. I was like, what is this? But I do enjoy being a lawyer. So like you said, you meet some wonderful people, but I'm like, people were really serious too.
Right.
I already came from University of Chicago, so that was already an intense school. And then to go from there to U of M, it was, yeah.
Well, and it's a means to an end. When you realize it's a means to an end, but you have to be motivated by something, a desire to help people, a desire for change. I mean, today, young folks, that protested in March, they have a sense of what it's like to have your vote count. I think for the first time in a long time, people have understood what it is to have your vote count, casting that vote, protesting, marching, saying enough is enough, saying Black Lives Matter. And it's not just African Americans who are saying that. Really, the beauty of what has happened, it's a silver lining in the cloud of the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. And I can go down and mention probably 100 to 1,000 people if I had the time that have been murdered at the hands of the police or have been victims of police brutality. But the silver lining in that cloud is that people did come together of all races and all ages, and they said enough is enough. Mainstream America saw, Robyn, what our experience has always been, what we have lived. Police brutality, Black and brown men and women being killed because of excessive use of force by law enforcement. That doesn't mean that all police officers are bad, but my goodness, there are so many that have abused their power. And so the fact that a lot of lawyers, young lawyers, have been engaged in that, engaged in voting rights issues as well, is wonderful, because that puts fire in our belly to know that the struggle continues. You can be a corporate lawyer and help with a voting rights case. You can be a corporate lawyer and help with a civil rights case. And you can be a criminal lawyer and help with a civil rights case. So it's something that if you want to give back and show your commitment, there's so many ways of doing it. And so I always say to young people, just do it because there's some reason. It's got to be a reason why you want to go to law school, a reason why you want to practice. And there are some that don't have a reason. They don't have anything else to do, so they just go to law school. Perhaps not, I would say, advisable, because it's a very expensive way to just kind of figure out what you want to do. But at the end, no matter how you get there, as long as you get there and make every day count for something. And you don't have to feel like you have to be a civil rights lawyer or a social justice engineer, although I think you do have to have some social justice in you. If you are an African-American lawyer, a Black lawyer, or even a Black and brown lawyer for that matter. I think social justice is part of your existence, whether you want it or not.
Okay, and now let's turn to, because you are the president of the National Bar Association, which was founded in 1925.
Yes.
So it's the Black Bar Association for across the whole nation. And so can you tell the audience, the benefit of being a part of a bar association, and particularly the National Bar Association?
Absolutely. 1925 was a critical year. It's when a group of African-American lawyers got together in Iowa and said, we need to form an organization, a bar association, because you have to remember in 1925, Black lawyers, African-American lawyers, were not allowed to be members of the American Bar Association. We weren't allowed to be members of many things as Black people. And so a group of visionaries came together and said, we're going to form our own organization, which they did. And ultimately, that is what the National Bar Association is. There are over 66,000 members that we represent. We have over 80 affiliate chapters. It's robust. It's an organization, I say, for Black and African-American lawyers. We need the National Bar just like we need oxygen to breathe, because you can be in any place, in any part of the world, and as a practicing African-American lawyer, at some point, you're going to encounter challenges that are based on nothing else but your race, nothing else, or based on gender. And if you have, like we have, Robyn, a double whammy, being a Black woman, you're going to encounter issues that really spiral out of control sometimes, because people don't want to hear you, they don't want to see you, and they certainly don't want to propel you into success. So when you have Black bar associations like the National Bar Association and all of our affiliate chapters, they become a reservoir of information, a reservoir of leadership, a reservoir of commonality, of camaraderie, a place where Black lawyers can call a safe haven to share, to teach each other, and to share experiences that really are unique to our existence as African-American and Black lawyers. So it's critically important, if you are a Black lawyer, to join the National Bar Association, or work with one of our affiliate chapters, because it will change your life. Networking is unbelievable. Again, largest and oldest organization of predominantly Black lawyers and the lawyers, judges, law professors, and law students in the world. Based on my administration, every single person who's in law school, who's a member of BALSA, is now automatically a member of the National Bar Association, free of charge. So
awesome.
We're rocking and rolling, moving and grooving. And it's just really important. When we look at, Robyn, we look at all these cases today, because a lot of people think it's in vogue to do civil rights cases, in vogue to do these social justice cases, to represent George Floyd's family, Breonna Taylor's family, and the like. National Bar Association members have always been on point with those. We just never saw them. So when people see a Ben Crump, when they see a Lanita Baker, when they see a Lee Merritt, when they see a Chris Stewart, when they see a Daryl Parks, when they see, and these are all the ones that we see on international television, but there are thousands of Black and African-American lawyers that we don't see on TV that are fighting the good fight in the trenches, trying to make a difference, not just at police brutality cases, but at voting rights cases, at COVID-related cases, that are fighting the good fight in our communities. And so the place where most of them congregate on some level is the National Bar Association, because it's a global organization. You can travel to many countries in the world and find that the National Bar has probably been there. And if they've been there, they tried to set up or did set up a sister bar relationship with a local bar association, because there are Black lawyers all over the world. And even if they're not Black lawyers, minority lawyers in different countries. And so it's just an amazing, dynamic, extraordinarily rich organization that is born out of us being refused entry into mainstream bar organizations. And so I think there's a lesson that we need to learn there, that because today we are still denied entry into some mainstream organizations, but it's important to create your own. You can look to government, you can look to others to help, but we need to be about the business also of using our own resources and looking to our own to create great opportunities. And that's what the National Bar is. It's a reservoir, it's a place where exceptional opportunities exist for Black lawyers.
Yeah, I look at it as like, well, my dad, I know he and his former law partner, they went to the ABA and the MBA. They always win. And I went to the first National Bar Conference, was like, I want to say I was in college. And it was, I mean, I've been to Memphis, Pennsylvania. I mean, I was there when Clarence Thomas came and spoke, and there was, it was an uproar about Clarence Thomas. And then they had Leon Higginbotham was outside giving a response to Clarence Thomas and what he had to say. And yeah, so and then I was there at the one in Memphis. Johnny Cochran was there. He just saw him walking around like he was a regular everyday person. And then what got us more recently more engaged was with the police brutality cases, and when Pamela Means became president in 2015, and I was doing my own programming on what to do when stopped by the police. And then I saw that the National Bar was doing it as well. And I was like, okay, hey, I gotta link up. And you got, like you said, you got some of the folks that are doing some of the high profile cases on police misconduct, but there's other issues out there like Michigan. We passed clean slate legislation. So we have, actually I've been getting, my phone is ringing off the hook with expungement. So I'm helping people to get their records cleared. And it was actually my mentor, Judge Deborah Thomas, recruited me to start doing these workshops. So I've been doing them for about 7 years. And in Michigan, if it's 1 felony and 2 misdemeanors was the old law. And we go do these workshops, and a lot of people were not eligible because they had, come on, they had more than 1 felony. But now we have new legislation where it's 3 felonies, unlimited misdemeanors. So it's a better feeling, it's experience of people calling me to assess eligibility, and most people are now eligible to get their records cleared. So it's like, but we're just trying to set up the infrastructure, because you have so many people that are eligible, but you don't have the funding necessarily in place to pay lawyers, and we recruit volunteer lawyers, but it's lawyers got to eat just like everybody else.
Right. Well, no, but that sometimes we do things because it's a labor of love for our community, and
Right.
like and when you say the expungement, so if their records are expunged, are they able to vote?
Yeah, for Michigan, even if you have a felony, you can still vote. You can still do that for Michigan. Yeah. So.
Well, and I say that because in Florida, the citizens of Florida, I used to live and practice in Florida, so I practiced with Willie Gary. In Florida, the citizens voted that if, once you did your time, if you were a convicted felon, that you would be able to come out, clean your record, and vote. And
Right.
it was bipartisan. The citizens of Florida voted by and large to pass that. And then a Republican-driven agenda, and I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm not making partisan, I'm not going to do partisan politics tonight. I'm just stating the facts. A Republican-driven legislature in Florida said, well, yeah, but you're going to have to pay all your fines and taxes, what amounted to a poll tax. And the problem with that is there's no unified system in Florida for people who did serve time to be able to know what they needed to pay. So you had people who were eligible theoretically, but who were being blocked because there were fines, these mystical fines they're supposed to pay, and didn't have the ability to even find out what those fines were. So many groups stepped in, the National Bar did step in, our Young Lawyers Division in particular, to help raise money so that we could get those people help to be able to pay off the fines, to know what the fines were in the different parts of the state, pay them off so they were eligible to vote. So that's why I raised the question in Michigan, because in some states, even if they are eligible, there's always this little hook that some legislatures have passed what I call draconian laws to still block people from voting. And that's what is classic voter suppression as well.
Right. Well, fortunately, we haven't had that. No, you can still vote if you're a felon in Michigan. But we do have this new legislation. But what we're having is people can't always afford a lawyer.
Yes.
I get people calling me every day. They said that their convictions have hindered them from either getting jobs or advancing on their jobs. So Michigan still needs help as far as getting matching lawyers up with people that are in need and getting the funding squared away for that as well. But yeah, we do have some exciting things happening here. And I want to ask you, because you're in Atlanta, and I know I've emailed you when I'm a concerned lawyer, when I have issues, I'm like, what's going on? What is the National Bar going to do? So what has it been like in Atlanta? How are things going there, recently?
Well, recently, so much is going on in Atlanta. We did in Georgia pass this, the legislature passed and the governor signed into law a very, very oppressive voter suppression law. So because in the early part of 2020, and to be precise, January 5th of 2021, Senator Raphael Warnock and Senator John Ossoff won the Senate runoff election here in Georgia. We know that on January 6th, there was an attempted coup d'etat, where there was an attempted takeover of the US government. Failed, but it was an attempted coup d'etat.
Right.
So not even 24 hours after the victory of Senator Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff did we see this country or a group of people trying to take over the government.
Right.
So Georgia is always, with Florida, seems to lead the way when it comes to oppressing people as it relates to voting issues. And there are other issues too. And we definitely have led the way with this draconian voting, new voting rights law. And it's going to make it more difficult for people to vote because they're getting rid of, all these. One of the things that was important, especially during COVID, was to be able to vote with drop boxes, being able to extend the hours for people to have flexibility so they can get to the polls. And Georgia has, with this new law, things such as giving people food and water who are in line, because our lines are extraordinarily long. You can get arrested for that. You could get fined, you could get charged. It is insane. That's the
Right.
kind of thing that's happening in Georgia. As you may know, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms decided not to run again. So she's just decided she's going to be a one-time mayor. That's very significant because Keisha Lance Bottoms has been, to me, a great mayor for the city of Atlanta. She's done
Right.
a lot of things. She's had a lot on her plate. She's caught a lot of people have given her a hard time because of a lot of things that have happened under her watch. You know, there's some police brutality cases that happened when she was the mayor. And a lot of things have happened. You know, we had protests here, a lot of vandalization in places like Buckhead and very, very affluent communities based on some of the protests. And so some people are up in arms about that. Of course, nobody wants to be vandalized, but there are a lot of things that have happened, but I think she's done a very fine job. So she made a determination she wasn't running for a second term. So we have really open season on the mayoral race. We have, we're in a state where the governor has, you know, when Donald Trump was still in office, the governor of Georgia decided to prematurely open up Georgia for business. And even the former president said, don't you think it's a little soon for that? I mean, no. Just to give you a flavor of what it's like here in Georgia during COVID. So as you asked what's happening in Atlanta, you know, now things have tapered off, but for a long time, the numbers of people dying and being infected with COVID was just spiking. Because we are, you know, this community, the Atlanta metropolitan area is vast, and there are large numbers of Black and brown people. And as we all know, Black and brown people were disproportionately impacted, negatively impacted by COVID, by another pandemic. So there's so many things happening, but there's some great things happening in Atlanta too. You know, Atlanta is like the second Hollywood. You've got people like Tyler Perry, every major rap artist, oh my goodness, that I have ever heard of seems to set up shop here in Atlanta. It's a place where, you know, Hollywood and the business community find that it's more affordable, say, than being in New York and in LA. So it's a city that is growing and busting at the seams. And there are a lot of African Americans who are at the table with all this growth and development. So there are a lot of great things to be excited about in Atlanta, but there's this cloud in Georgia that impacts our communities in a significant way. So Atlanta is our community, and it's impacted in a significant way when we talk about voter suppression and things like that. And so we have a rich history in civil rights here in Atlanta in particular, and we have, you know, a number of HBCUs. We have Spelman, we have Morehouse, we have Clark Atlanta, we have just the whole AU Center. We have so many strong, phenomenal institutions of higher learning. And so there are many reasons for us to be proud here in Atlanta, but like other places, we are suffering under voter suppression, and there needs to be a continuous effort to try to correct that.
Yeah, I did do some voter protection. I did some in Michigan, but we were through the National Bar, and I was able to do some in Atlanta, like through the National Bar, like you guys had set it up for us to do it. So I was working with people, like they were trying to, you know, cure their ballots or make sure that their ballots got from the drop-off location and actually counted, things like that. So I definitely learned more. You know, I visited Atlanta. I have family there. I've been there a few times, and I do love going there. My sister and I went there to the King Center, and we because we didn't go to Black colleges, so we said we kept going there. We went 3 days in a row. We got to get our education going on. And we went to the Human Rights Museum.
Yes.
So yes, I do love Atlanta. I do want to come back when things are better and check everything out and, you know, say hello to you.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so the National Bar, I know from seeing emails and some of the, some of the programs I've participated, you guys have had a lot of wonderful and exciting programs throughout this year. And then can you tell the audience, like, what do we have to look forward to for the convention that's coming up in July?
Absolutely. Well, this year, you know, there was the cloud of COVID. But, you know, I'm known to take lemon and make lemonade. And this year was no different, because when you're thrown the monkey wrench of COVID, when you think you're going to have a year where you're going to travel throughout the country and see people, and then COVID happens and you realize that your whole year is going to be virtual, you have to pivot. And that means you have a lemon in front of you and you better make some lemonade. So we did that this year. I'm proud. our National Bar family stood together and just mobilized. We had 3 major buckets that we focused on: police brutality, COVID-19, and election protection or voter suppression. And in each of those areas, we had robust task force, programming galore, and we went out into our community, mostly virtually, through our churches, through our organizations, and sometimes in person when it came to, the election work that we did, people being at the polls. And we made our presence known to educate our communities, to bring in our communities. We sent out protective gear to 8 of the most, the worst affected cities, urban centers of COVID, because one thing we knew, if our kids don't have access to high-speed internet or computers, they cannot learn virtually. You can't learn on a phone. And so one of the things that we did, I'll just give you an example of what our COVID task force did. We sent and we did a campaign of collecting slightly used computers or brand new computers, and we sent them into those cities so they could get to those children. We arranged even a program for law students. Some law students were almost homeless. They moved to law school, and then when the school shut down, they had to go back home. Maybe home was not a conducive environment for studying for the bar. So we arranged for hotels to allow our law students to come in so they could use their Wi-Fi and study and have passes to go into their business lounges. We had a robust, like you participated in the election protection program, and all these things we're continuing to do. Where we did training in 29 different states at our Wiley-Branton conference, simultaneous training. We had just at all of our town halls, we had town halls that addressed things such as how corporate America turned its back on Black partners in majority firms. Now you talk about a courageous conversation. It wasn't courageous for me because I talk that all the time, but if you're a Black partner in a majority firm participating in that, it was absolutely phenomenal. So we had those types of programs on healthcare issues, things that impact our community that not just lawyers are interested in, but the community at large. Police brutality. You talked, Robyn, about know your rights. What do you do when you're stopped by a police? We just expanded that, took it to the next level. We had our first ever virtual international conference. And we had international meetings and fireside chats with just very dynamic leaders. We have converted some of our, before what they were corporate sponsorships, into multiple year partnerships. And Robyn, when I talk about partnerships, like it's one thing if you have a sponsor for your conference, they buy you a little turkey dinner or chicken dinner, and do all that. Well, that's good, but our organization is much richer than just having our dinners and our events. It's about programming, longevity, and partnerships that are mutually beneficial. So building partnerships, transforming the sponsorships into partnerships to benefit not just the NBA, but the partners, so that we can ensure that down the line, the NBA is synonymous with excellence. So now, and we're the place, if you need a Black lawyer for any reason, in any practice area, at the top of his or her game, actually lawyers at the top of their game, not just Black lawyers, but if you're looking for lawyers at the top of their game, we've got them here at the National Bar Association. And that was the messaging we sent out. So what can they expect at our annual conference? Really, I believe it's going to be off the chain, Robyn. And I say that for this reason. One, when you have a virtual year, you've got to take it to the next level. People get tired. They have virtual fatigue or Zoom fatigue. I am tired of Zoom calls every day, all day. But by the same token, we're able to reach a wider audience, because sometimes people can't travel to a bar meeting and spend 5 days, 4 days, 3 days. They might have a trial, but they can tune in to different programming throughout the day. And so what we've done is we have programs centered around, of course, those 3 buckets, having also interaction with the administration. This year we did have, Vice President Kamala Harris did come and speak to our members. We did have a robust, we have recommended so many highly qualified African Americans to diversify the bench. I'm happy to say that we have many, many people who have been the nominees. We also supported other people like Kristen Clark and like Vanita Gupta, like so many other people, even if they didn't come, they are, Kristen Clark, she's one of our members, But
Right.
Kristen Clark, people had her on the radar even before we mobilized and did the things that we needed to do to support her. And so our interaction with the administration has been very robust on many levels in an effort to help diversify the bench as well as the U.S. attorneys and the U.S. Marshals. So at the conference, you'll see the results of that or more of that, because we want our members, we had like an incredible program, which we have now, of what people should do if they want to be in the administration, not just if they want to become federal judges, but if they want to be in the administration, what do they need to do? We had seminars about that because people needed to know these are the things you need to do. And by the way, we happen to have one of our members who's on the transition committee. So we had within our group people who can help us design robust vetting within our organization so that our members would be prepared to submit their applications. So the conference, the convention, will be a culmination of that and more. So from a governmental standpoint, from a police brutality standpoint, from a election protection standpoint, from a bridging the digital divide, that's critical in our communities because, basically from my standpoint, I have 2 teenage children. I really believe that our kids are almost a year behind. There's some countries in the world that just said, look, COVID has taken over. No matter what we do, they're going to be a year behind. And they just had everyone repeat a year. I'm not suggesting that in this country. I'm recognizing that there's a digital divide and our children in our community have been disproportionately impacted, just like we were disproportionately impacted on other levels with COVID. So our annual conference is also designed to address that, but not talk about it, address it. What programs, funding, what our partners are doing, and how we can move the needle on that. So that's it. And then from an international standpoint as well, updating on where Amnesty International is, where the UN is on these critical issues involving our community. As you probably know, the international community stood in solidarity with Black Lives Matter and stood in solidarity with those, with George Floyd's family, Breonna Taylor, with all the social justice ills that were happening here. They played themselves out in the international world and throughout the world. There were people in London, for instance, that were being arrested for siding with Black Lives Matter, for protesting in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement in the US. Well, they have their own problems over there in terms of police brutality. We don't dominate that. It's throughout the world as it relates to Black and brown people. We just lead the way, which is a sad tale. And so having other countries stand in solidarity with some of the things that we're doing at the National Bar to help move the needle and to help bring about better equality and minimize or eradicate or get rid of all this injustice that we're seeing. That's the type of thing that we're going to see at our annual convention. How can people get engaged? Specifically, not talking about, but how can they get engaged? Those are the questions that we want to answer. How can they get engaged if they want to do it internationally, if they want to do it in the South, if they want to do it in Michigan, wherever they want to get engaged, how? And that's the beauty of having a national organization that is focused on social justice. Because the message is, you're a corporate lawyer, you're a tax lawyer, that does not stop you from getting out there and not being a pariah, but being a social engineer. And that's our message at the National Bar Association.
Yes, and it's been wonderful. Like, I know I did zoom into when you guys were talking about working with the Biden administration. I participated in that. I went to a couple of the sessions on that. And then the Crown Act, which we still haven't passed it here in Michigan. So I'm going to be meeting with Representative Sarah Anthony. She's one of the co-sponsors of legislation here in Michigan, but we definitely want to make sure that we have protection for Black women and our ability to wear our hair, however we want, natural, straight, braids, however. But yeah, and then, I made a video about the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. And throughout this year, like in the fall, I was teaching, because I teach a class on law and African-American experience. And that was unique.
Can I just say I'm so proud of you, Robyn, but go ahead.
It was unique because I taught it in the winter term, and we went from like you talk about the kids, catching up the kids and everything, because I do educational advocacy too with K through 12, but like I teach college students. And so we were in person, and then COVID hit and we went online. And then in the fall we came back and we were all online. And so that was an interesting experience as a teacher, trying to get the kids to be all engaged. I mean, I know I call them kids, they're college. They look to me, that made me think of high school though, they're so young or whatever. But so it was definitely an experience. And then being in the midst of this, it's surreal, like having Trump as having a white supremacist president. Like we're in the midst of the class teaching law in the African American experience and looking at the history of civil rights and oppression. But then we're like living in a time where there's oppression and we have an oppressive president, and it's like crazy. And then, the National Bar, I did appreciate, I'm a seminar junkie anyway. So it was great for me to go and, participate with the programming, and, you did it from home. I mean, it wasn't the same as being in person, but you still were able to engage and see people from all over. Like we're engaging now, we're still able to engage and just learn how to be tech savvy, whether you want to be or not. And so, so this has definitely been good to have this opportunity to engage with you. And, I know your year will be coming to an end, in July?
In July, at the end of July. Absolutely. Yeah. And for me, this has been a great look. I ran for president-elect of the National Bar Association because there were people who loved our organization, who felt that even though I had contributed every year, year in and year out for decades, that the bar needed me. And I said, well, I'm always contributing to the NBA. And anyway, if anyone asked me, they said, no, they need you in a different way. And they persuaded me to run. And I did, not because of what I felt what the NBA could do for me, but what I felt that I could bring to an organization that had already done so much for me, that I loved. And remember, I said, for me, the NBA is like oxygen if you are a Black lawyer. And for those who may not believe me, it's because they haven't been there, where their back is up against the wall, where they have situations that are unique, things that happen to Black lawyers for racial reasons. And I'm not saying that that's always the case. I mean, I have certainly things that happen to me because I'm a woman. I get it, because I'm a Black woman. But all of the above, we find a place and a safe space at the National Bar Association and at our Black bars to address in a way where we then are refueled to go back out into the world and do the work that we need to do in our communities. And that's what I think is special, because again, I don't think being a corporate lawyer or a tax lawyer or a mergers and acquisitions lawyer or being in a specialized practice or a criminal defense lawyer or a prosecutor, I don't think that that means you can't do social justice. On the contrary, there's an opening for you to do that and social justice, to earn a living, earn a great living, but do social justice. You can speak to your church. You can speak to your organizations. If you're a member of a sorority, a member of fraternity, a member of different organizations, that some organizations, social groups that don't do anything in the community. It doesn't matter. You can still speak truth to power and to share. People have questions about elections, just basic questions. They turn to, in our community, they turn to our lawyers for the answers. So I always tell Black lawyers, you can hide if you want to, but when people see you and know that you have that degree and that license, it means something. And what it means is that you're a leader. And what it means is that people are going to turn to you for advice. What it means is that people expect you to do good, because that's a tradition of the National Bar Association. You, your dad, all the people, so many people in your circle that I'm aware of, y'all are, as you do your practice areas and make a living, doing good at the same time. And that's the distinction. It's not that you don't get your, I'm a member of the ABA as well. I'm a member of so many bar associations. I lecture everywhere because I love doing trial advocacy. I love teaching. I love trial boot camps. I just love that. So I don't discriminate with who I do it for. I'm just going to make sure I do it for the National Bar Association. So you are fueled in a different way from the ABA and other bars, like your local bars that you might be. Absolutely, they will give you certain things, but there's nothing like being at the National Bar Association meeting and addressing issues, whether they're ethics, professionalism, in your substantive areas, because you're going to get that little extra. Because we stand on the shoulders of great men and women, the Gertrude Rushes of the world.
Right.
The Charles Hamilton Houstons, the Thurgood Marshalls, the Constance Baker Motleys. How about the Robyn McCoys of the world? Johnny Cochran's, the Willie Garys. No, they need to look at young lawyers too. We can learn from each other. And I always tell people, it's just not a one-way thing where the more seasoned lawyers teach you. No, I remember when I do our trial masters thing, for years I did it with somebody who had been a law clerk of mine. I brought him and I said, I need him to do his presentation. He did a presentation on how to try a case from an iPad. Now, you know, me, myself, and I've tried many cases. I've never tried anybody's kind of case from an iPad. But this young man, Ron Watterson, who's an extraordinary lawyer here, you know Ron, here in the Atlanta area, he's done a presentation for many years in the boot camps, one of the litigation boot camps at the National Bar Association, on how to successfully try a case with your iPad, how to examine, how to manipulate the documents, where you don't have to have, when I try cases, I have to have an IT professional doing this and that and all this other stuff. You can do that if you want, but you control the narrative in which you do. Bring the depositions up, bring the evidence up, bring all this up from your iPad, because let me tell you something, what happens with technology, the IT people, sometimes it goes down. But if you have your iPad, it's a different way that you're wired into the courtroom. So there's so many, and that's learning from someone who is 20 years your junior in experience as a lawyer. But we can learn from each other. Y'all young lawyers, like you just said, you're up here doing your technology, YouTube and all that kind of stuff. We are forced now to be more proficient in technology, but there's no comparison, Robyn, between your generation, my generation, your dad's generation, and other generations that are older than me in terms of our knowledge. So we can learn from you all. You all are, I always say in Washington, every 4 years, there's a whole nother group, I used to call them of debutantes, not literally debutantes, but new folks that are coming in with every new administration. And even if it's a second term for an administration, there's a whole new group of people coming in to work in the administration that are younger, that are smarter, that are faster, that are brighter, that have so much to add. They don't have the season, but they have the energy and the heart. And those protests that we saw, protesting the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and all those other people, so many people, fueled with young people who have the heart and the energy. They're not Dr. King because they can't be Dr. King. They can't be Jesse Jackson. They can't be all of those. They can't be Congressman Lewis, but they can be themselves and contribute and vote and speak truth to power. And that is critically important. And that's when you know that there's growth happening in our communities.
Yes, and I definitely have been inspired by the young folks, like what they've been doing. And then even, we look at history and the civil rights movement, and it seems like there are more white folks that are wakening up. They're becoming woke and learning how to be advocates and activists for justice. And then, people protesting in person, people protesting online. I did videos because I'm like, with my students, I'm like, okay, some of them are going to go in person, some of them, and I got my mom in the background.
I think you went on mute. There we go.
Oh, that was my calling, family law. So it was, so it's, I was like, you kind of have to gear towards where the kids are at too. So like there was in-person protests. I was talking about, we're in the middle of COVID, so you want people to be safe. So I made videos. I'm like, okay, here are the videos of how to protest if you're going to do it in person. If here's, how you can protest online. You can do videos, you can do Zoom meetings online, you can do music, dancers, all just be creative, things like that. And yeah, the young people have definitely been very inspirational, and you have been an inspiration to me to again to see when I just look at your background and the things that you've done, and I still have some things to do. So it's like, I'm like, oh, and when I was in New York, you guys had that panel for women practicing, like handling major cases. And I was like, hey, that might be something I do. I mean, my dad, he's been trying to pull me back in. He does the personal injury, wrongful death. And like I said, we have a case now with a young boy that was unfortunately was shot by his neighbor. So we're going to be working on that. So I see we're kind of pressed for time, and I do appreciate that you've taken this time with me, and I'm going to go ahead and edit the videos. I'll send them to you, and I look forward to seeing you virtually at the conference. And then obviously too in person when it's safe for us to meet in person and all that. And so you have a blessed day. Did you have anything else to add for the audience before we leave?
What I wanted to say is, for wherever you are in your life, just remember that your voice counts. Whether you're a lawyer or not, if you're a lawyer, your voice absolutely counts. You need to make it count. Be creative. And, look at Robyn. First of all, she's phenomenal on all levels. And I'm just so proud of what you're doing. So when you see, and I think the panel was Women in the Game, where that was the panel, that the NBA panel were there. And for me, I remembered Grace Spates, who's at Morgan & Morgan. I remember Sandy Shambly, who was the first Black woman partner at Steptoe, a big firm in DC. Grace Spates, first Black woman partner at Morgan & Morgan. I'm sorry, Morgan Lewis Backus in the DC office. They were my role models as Black women. Then there were a bunch of African-American men and other men and women that were also role models. So what you want to do is find someone who you love to be like or emulate, and make them your mentor so they can show you the ropes, because we all need each other. So I just want to say, just keep on fighting, struggling, and know that, Robyn, all the things that you want to do, you're going to do, and then some. You're going to exceed the previous generation, and then people coming behind you will exceed all of your dreams, and that is progress, because things are different. But if we don't pick people up and bring them with us, we won't continue the progress. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your outreach. Good luck on that case. And let me tell you, you have one case like that, it turns into another case, into another case, and then you become that go-to person. And overnight, you're like, how did this happen? It happened because you've got a heart, you've got a soul, and you're about the right things. And that's what it is, to have passion for what you do. So keep it up. And somebody got to see your dad and your family as well.
I will, and you do it the same. And I would hug you, but we're virtual, but I'm not hug because I'm a huggy person. But thank you. Have a blessed day. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for being a phenomenal attorney and NBA president and mentor, role model, all that. So you have a blessed day, and I'll talk with you later.
All right. Thanks, Robyn. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, CK.